Was there actually disc golf happening this weekend? Who knows? I mean, instead of disc golf, we had disc tracks from Kendrick and Drake dropping some fire disc tracks against each other, but let's talk about disc golf. DDO, what happened? Let's talk about it. Also, just one more thing. If you have been into, instead of Discmania, Trackmania, it's a racing game. There's a map that has just dropped where people are going to spend hundreds of hours playing this one singular map, and one of my favorite streamers literally got 70k concurrent viewers streaming this game, and he will continue to be streaming this game. Much more hype than DDO. But with that, let's get into DDO. Alright, so with that said, we have the new Champions Landing. There was a lot of hype built around this rebrand, but for the most part, it is the same look and feel, besides a couple of new layout changes. But with that said, there is the potential for a totally new redesign in the near future. But this is the same old Emporia country club that we all quote unquote know and love, so inevitably that meant lots of wind and lots of hard shots with tight OB lines. But honestly, the biggest thing here was just an incredible lack of spectators. For whatever reason, even with the AM side coming to this event, there was just so few people watching this event live. And it really begs the question, does this need to be off the tour? Does this need to be totally moved to Kansas City? It really makes you wonder, because especially coming from a person that is native to Kansas City, we have great courses, we have a great crowd, we have a great spectatorship for most events that are A tiers. So I can only assume that if we did get a full Elite Series event, it would just totally overshadow anything that Emporia has. And it would be so much easier to travel to for spectators and players. So all in all, I really wish they would consider moving it to Kansas City, but for the time being, it is Emporia. But according to DGN, the stream stats were basically on par with last year for MPO versus FPO. So last year, peak MPO was 8.2 thousand concurrent, whereas this year, the peak FPO, it was 10.7k concurrent. So yes, there is a nice uptick in viewership, but for the most part, it was just not seen or felt, which really makes it hard to care about an event when it feels like nobody's even there. So one potential solution would just be having free general admission. That would certainly add a little bit more crowds and make it feel like an actual event, which they have been doing for so many years. So really, I think it'd be beneficial, just because I can almost certainly guarantee that the money they make from general admission can't be that much. So just boost up crowds and have a lot more people coming to your event that might buy all your merch. All right, so on to MPO. First off, I gotta give a huge shout out to two players that I'm just so stoked about. Number one being Anthony Bodanza. This is his second tour event this year, I believe, with his first one being Waco. Finishes in 73rd, which may not sound particularly great, but with 2 even rounds, he finishes both rounds with 1,000 plus rated, with his highest being 10-11. And honestly, despite his first round being +7, the rest of his entire tournament looked solid. Past his first 9 holes, he was even throughout the entire tournament. And for a course like this that requires good shots, lots of OB, and of course lots of wind, you can't really say anything too bad about that performance. Also, a huge shout out to Randy Dueck, my friend from Belize, gets a top 20 finish, finishing in 19th place, consistently getting about 4 under every round despite these incredibly high winds, and nearly getting an ace on hole 16. Love it. I'm so excited for him. But on to the contenders. Ezra Robinson looked like he had potential to take it down, but all in all, just went a little bit too hard, trying to go for a little bit too much, couldn't get anything going in the front 9, and then takes a triple, and then just had to fight back his hardest just to get a little bit under par, finishing his final round with 1 under, going from 3rd place to 11. Not his best comeback after a great showing at Champions Cup, but still the pieces are definitely there, and I think he has the potential to get a podium finish in the next coming events. Next up, good old Prezi continues to show how strong of a player he is, especially in adverse conditions. And while he was slow and steady, never really had anything too remarkable, he also tied for the lowest bogey percentage the entire weekend with 6%. And despite some lackluster C1 and C2 putting, finishes in 5th place, which I think is a great finish for him, because I feel like so many players right after a win just kind of shrug it off and they're like, oh, whatever, like it is what it is. But no, he fought back very, very well at this event, and I love to see this consistency and confidence for him. Next up with the hot round, and the final round was Joey Buckets with a 13 under 1084 rated final round. Definitely a player that has the potential to take down an entire Elite Series event. We have been seeing him pop up again and again this year, and with 13 birdies to finish the tournament, finishing in 4th place, this is definitely a great showcase from him. And oh yeah, he got 6 out of 8 Circle 2 putts in his final round. And on a day where everyone else is crushing, the fact that he's able to crush even better makes me think his potential is just so high, and I love to see this from him because he's just good vibes all around. Next up, coming in 3rd, Gavin Rathbun. This has been a player that everyone has been rooting for so long, and especially after his shoulder surgery, it looked like he might just be out of it, and there might not be a way for him to come back to being like a top 10 finisher. But that was not the case. Getting a 3rd place finish here really does cement him as being back, being a strong player overall, and looking confident his whole way through, especially in his final round. also getting the lowest bogey percentage with 6%. And really a player that has been grinding for so long, with a 3rd place in Des Moines in 2021, 4th place at DGLO in 2022, 12th place here last year, and now a 3rd place finish. I don't know if he's the most consistent player, but I love to see this strong finish from him, and I think this is definitely indicative of a stronger version of him with his new form and controlled backhand. And next up, a player that I did not foresee coming in 2nd place, good old Gannon Buhr, who is just always lurking in the shadows of a final round. Same story as Joey Buckets, basically near perfection in his final round with insane Circle 2, totaling his whole tournament to be 50% from C2. Absolutely madness, somehow finishing in 2nd place despite seemingly being out of it, especially at the start of the round. And he shows up when it matters most. I think overall his game's looking so good. Obviously his putter's looking great, those chainouts of past seem to be not a thing now, and I think his control was especially evident during a windy round like this. Overall, just a very strong performance, and overall he's had a great season, but I really want to see him just totally crush the entire division. But really this felt like just a battle between Ricky and Calvin. With Ricky seemingly throwing shot for shot with Calvin, it looked like he was going so strong. There might be a chance for Calvin falls short because he has been falling short many events, especially this year, but especially after a hole 8 bogey, all the momentum for Ricky seemed to just go away in a moment because Calvin was going off 7 under through 7, putter looking dialed, drives looking amazing, upshots looking effortless. Really never a doubt for Calvin this entire way through. And especially with hole 16, where Calvin gets a lucky redirect and Ricky gets an unlucky bounce into the OB, it was basically a GG after that. So with that, Calvin gets an amazing win. First one since last year at Jonesboro. Feels like totally a strange anomaly, but definitely a great return to form from Calvin. Honestly, probably the most menacing player to win an event because after every incredible shot, incredible putt, there is just no emotion besides like a millisecond of joy, and then he goes back to being his same old Calvin self. And especially without having any forehands, this is just so remarkable, and I think it is truly impressive how strong a player Calvin is. And I think much like Gannon, he is always just lurking in the background, but there's usually just one player or two players that are just playing better than him, so you don't often see how good he is. But especially for an event like this, where it isn't a full field, we finally get to see how strong Calvin is. And it really felt like there was never a doubt that he was going to take it down.
You know, being up there all the time and, you know, just watching people win definitely does start to wear on you, and it just really feels good to actually pull off one myself.
Beth at 69.
I just told myself, you got to will this one in there. Whatever you have, just will it in there.
This man is unbelievable. This is what athletes live for. This is the moment.
But with that said, let's move on to FPO. Honestly, this is probably one of the lowest ratings in the modern era of FPO. Feeling much closer to like a Silver Series event, it felt like nobody was really trying to go under par, which made it much more difficult to watch. But with that said, the final round, final moments definitely had its fair share of strong emotions, with probably the standout player being Emily Weatherman, 923 rated, shows off how good of a player she truly is. And without needing crazy distance on a course like this, she just played her game, absolutely crushed in the final round, and honestly looked like she was going to take it down up until hole 16 where she goes OB, comes back with a birdie, and then bogeys 18, which feels like a gotta get birdie, especially when you're fighting for the win. But still, finishing in 3rd place, by far her best finish, bar none, and this will definitely be a great way to get her name out there and show how strong of a player she truly is. Next up, a player that did not look as strong, but also had a great chance to take it down, Holyn Handley. Absolutely dialed in the front 9 with 5 birdies through 7 holes. It looked like she also might have a strong chance to take it down, but for whatever reason, Holyn just cannot seem to pull it together, especially in that back 9 final round. And that was definitely the case here, finishing 3 strokes back of the leader with 4 OBs after hole 7. And I don't know if she's like trying too hard, not focusing enough, but I definitely think she needs to refocus, recalibrate her game, especially in those final round moments, because it is just not working, and she definitely has the potential to take down more events, but just is not doing it. But let's move on to the real story here, Missy versus Hailey King. So I think without being too savage, it looked like it was probably just a battle between these two. Both looked very strong in their game, with hardly any bogeys on the front 9, and each with 5 birdies. It was really a great battle between these two. But with Hailey getting a phenomenal birdie on hole 17, it looked like it was just a GG done deal. But then we get to hole 18 where Hailey is up by 1 stroke, and it looks like Missy is not going to birdie. So essentially all Hailey has to do is just pitch up for an easy par. It is a shot that she definitely has in her bag, but for whatever reason just does not execute properly, goes short on a very easy upshot, getting a bogey instead of a birdie, putting her tied with Missy Gannon, which means we get a good old 3-hole playoff with the new rules. And oh boy, despite Missy having a very pinched off look for birdie on hole 16 in the playoffs, and Hailey having a very easy birdie chance, Missy jams it in from 40, and basically it was a done deal after that. Because you could see Hailey's game just kind of fell off with a bogey on hole 17 and Missy getting a birdie. So they both par and Missy takes it down. And truly this feels very much like a tournament where Missy should not have won this event. So many moments other players look like they had a couple stroke advantage, but they all fall short due to like stress or whatever the conditions were, which certainly feels fitting for a course like this where wind is always at your back, you're always just a little bit on edge. But truly just a crazy finish, and I'm so glad that we finally get 3 holes for playoffs because it all feels so much more balanced and we get a better feel for who the true champ should be. So despite low spectatorship, honestly not an event I really cared about all that much, it was still a great finish despite the first 2 rounds being pretty lackluster. So will we see this as an elite series for the time being? I think yes, but it's definitely possible that it gets removed. So with that, what do you guys think? I'd love to know. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Wild Runs, signing out. Peace.